And our friends have been trying to come to India for some time. They got visas only recently and they have just arrived, and we're delighted to have you with us. So, this event is being podcast live on Facebook, YouTube, X, and our website. So, and it will become a part of our archives on our website of the Foreign Correspondents Club of South Asia. May I now invite our Secretary Prakash Nanda to introduce our distinguished guest. Thank you.
Friends, welcome.
Mike.
Hello. 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 Yeah, friends, welcome. As our president has said, that we are really privileged to have this orchestra. The speakers, they will be expressing and they will be telling us their thing. So we have got 4 distinguished speakers. One, let me begin with Dr. Hannah Celeste. I think, is that the way to pronounce it? Russian name. She is the director of the Security Studies and Global Outreach Program at the Foreign Policy Council. It's called Ukraine Prism. And she also happens to be the editor-in-chief at EUA, that is Ukraine Analytica, right? Then we have amongst us Ola Vorojevic. Excuse me if I'm not sure of pronouncing it properly. And she's a distinguished journalist, and she's an expert with the Foreign Policy Council, again of Ukraine Prism. And she's the deputy editor-in-chief of Ukrainsky Tizdem. And then we have Mr. Mikhailo Samas. He's the director of the New Geopolitics Research Network. And next to me is Mrs. Natalia Budryska. She is a journalist also and an expert on Asia Pacific. So welcome you all. And please.
Thank you, Prakash. Friends, as you all know, the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February last year is the most serious war since the Second World War. And it has been going on. There are no signs of the war coming to an end. Mr. President Zelensky visited Washington and met the president and requested for some help, but the Republicans were not very forthcoming. And there is this threat of Mr. Trump coming back to power and Mr. Biden facing impeachment, and then Mr. Zelensky also went to the Nordic country. He met Nordic leaders in Oslo, and this war, according to the New York Times of the day before yesterday, has led to 500,000 casualties, either dead or injured. The figures are American. The Russian figures, the Russians say they're highly exaggerated, but we don't know the Ukrainian figures because they say that they do not want to disclose the figures because that could affect their war preparation. Some 28 countries from all over the world have been assisting Ukraine with help, and it has been estimated that the economic loss of the war is something like $500 billion for Ukraine, and it's going to be $7 trillion in course of the next decade for the Russians. So these are the developments, and we are delighted to have our friends from Ukraine. Now we want to get their version from them. So let me begin with Olha, and then after Mikhail, thereafter so and so. Thank you. Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Venkat, for this kind introduction. But to start with, frankly, I'm also a journalist and working in Ukraine as a journalist for many years before I entered entered Ukrainian prism as an expert and focused my expertise on South Asia. And as a journalist and having this background, what is really difficult for me now is like versions, Ukrainian, American, Russian. So we came here and we have some numbers, and this is what for me important. We have numbers, we have statistics, we have what we can see and what we can share. And this is not the version, this is what it is. So when I was coming back here, I'm also, besides of my professional capabilities, I'm also a mother of 2 young kids, and they are staying in Ukraine now. This is the first time when I left them in Ukraine since the start of full-scale invasion. Previously, when I was traveling, I was trying either to leave them with my mother in Poland or to take them even with me. And although you can hear from the news that we may have some stalemate, yes, in what we achieved in the war. But over these 2 years, Ukraine taught a lot. With the help of the partners, of course, Ukraine made its capabilities to defend the cities, for example, Kyiv, especially Kyiv, to defend it better with anti-aircraft systems. So now, having taken into consideration the number of missiles and drones that are coming to Kyiv, has really something what we can compare with the Iron Dome in Israel, due to the systems and due to the new systems that we have. So my example is as well, though we are in the war and we understand that it will be a prolonged war, I have trust in my country and I can leave there my kids for a week. What we've taught over these 2 years and what we've understood. For Ukraine, the war that we are fighting now is an existential war. Why? If you heard recently what the President Putin was talking on during his press conference, he once more repeated about denazification, demilitarization, which I think even for people far away from both our countries, I think you understand now that this is nonsense. For him, the main thing and what he wants to achieve, he wants to make Ukrainians Russians, and we don't want to. And we are a sovereign state. That is why for Ukraine, the war we are fighting now is an existential war, the war that we need to win so that to exist as a nation and as people. If you see what had happened over those territories that were deoccupied, so in either in southern Ukraine or in Kharkiv region, how many people were tortured, were killed just for wearing blue and yellow or for speaking Ukrainian. That is why we are insisting on that. And this is what I think is important to understand here. I remember that while reading Indian press since the very beginning, I could often hear about that this is the war NATO and Russia. But how could it be the war between NATO and Russia if we're not members of them? And frankly, if you look at the polls, Ukrainians wanted to become members of NATO, and the number of people who who would vote for Ukraine to become the member of NATO increased at first with the start of the war in 2014, and then significantly to over 80% with the start of full-scale invasion. Because we understand that though Ukraine is a big country, biggest in Europe, still having such a big neighbor as Russia, we need to be together with those people who share our values and with whom we can defend these values. And this is what I think it is important to understand. that, and this is what I would like to stress and to share here, and I'm ready for more of your questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us here and we have to give us a possibility to talk about our war and to tell you some details. I will focus in on the military issue because I'm a military analyst. So I would like to say that since summer campaign finishing and Russia now is trying to take a strategic initiative, especially on Donbass, on the main direction from the northern east, from the east, and from the southern east. I wouldn't say the names of the cities and towns, but the idea of Russians is that do not allow Ukrainian to break through the southern front toward Crimea, which is because Crimea is the center of gravity of this war now, and trying to, in the same time, to break through the front of the Donbass to occupy all of Donetsk Oblast and transferring this situation to 2024, actually waiting for the Trump. So from my understanding, the main idea now for Putin to wait for Trump to keep the front very similar like we have now, but of course they're trying to get all of Donbass to show to Trump that you see, you support in Ukraine, you're given the $60 billion per year, but Ukraine cannot spend it properly, wasted it. So let's President Zelensky, let's sign some agreement. Of course, it will be agreement of capitulation of Ukraine. From Ukrainian point of view, this period, I mean, from this day to the end of the 2024 will be opposite. Trying to break through the southern front, come to the Crimea. I mean, even not to come into the territory of Crimea, but approach to the Crimea and start the operation, shaping operations. Finally, maybe we will get the air superiority instrument like F-16. Using the JLSDB, it's ground small diameter bombs from Saab and Boeing, which is that now we are getting, of course, the ATACMS to destroy the all of Russian infrastructure on the Crimea, and using the Sea drones to secure the area of around the Crimea on the sea, and till the end of 2024 to have a blockade of Crimea, at least blockade of Crimea, and of course they cut the so-called land corridor from the Russian territory to occupy Crimea. So if Ukraine get it, it means that Trump will support Ukraine. How is paradoxically not looks like now, but if Trump will see that Putin is loser now, I mean that Putin didn't change anything for this year, it will be a solution for next president, American president. It's better to support Ukraine to finish this war, because if not support Ukraine, it will be a war position for several years, and of course the losing of this war by Ukraine means that losing the leadership of the United States, or even some positions in the war. The same for European Union. And of course, immediately it will be China, Russia get empty space. It's definitely. So for next year, it will be a crucial developments. It will be a crucial importance for what we have on battlefield. Of course, now Ukraine is focusing on building own or developing the defense industry base, especially in the sphere of electronic warfare, especially the drone warfare. For example, now Ukraine produces kind of 50,000 drones per month. So can you imagine the quantity or the intensity of using drones now on the battlefield? It's every second you see hundreds of drones on the battlefield. It's absolutely different. So why it's important for Ukraine to get a defense industry base, to have a technological base, to have a success next year and after this. I hope that it will be more definitely talking about the finish of this war. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samus. May I now request Dr. Hannah Celeste?
Thank you very much. I would probably need to start from the very beginning, the main question that you may have, why we're here, and why the Ukrainian delegation is in New Delhi. Foreign Policy Council of Ukraine increasingly is the biggest Ukrainian foreign policy and security think tank. And for many years, we've been in charge of the both advising to the government, parliament for different governments. So we are bipartisan, and this way we are independent. We've been drafting foreign policy strategy or assessing foreign policy strategy of Ukraine. And we know that Ukrainian foreign policy was quite a Europe-centric. That was a reality of the priorities that we had. However, even that we started to speak about necessity to go to Asia before the full-fledged war in 2022, Ukraine adopted so-called Asia strategy just a few months before the war. But the war demonstrated even more several basic things. We know very little about the countries from which we would like to have support. Sometimes we don't understand why the certain decisions are made, so we can have a perfect trade turnover. Like with India, India was one of the biggest Ukrainian trade partners, but it's not always transformed in the knowledge about each other. So the fact that you have more yoga classes in Odessa than probably of the Ukrainian dance, that's more of the cultural things, but it doesn't bring the knowledge about what is modern India in terms of politics and in terms of the society. That's why at a certain moment we decided to have a project that we call New Global Partnership, where we chose 9 countries around the globe that we considered important for Ukraine, for finding out the new priorities for the bilateral relations, to identify what these countries think about Ukraine, what knowledge they would like to have, to talk about what is happening in Ukraine, because all of us are these months of the war staying in Ukraine, so it is really first-hand experience with the different regions of Ukraine. We can speak not from the news of the relatives, but from our experience of waking up in the night, and what is the difference between drones and missiles attacks against your cities and how we react. But at the same time, we also came here to listen to our colleagues from the different Indian think tanks. And we already have very active day-to-day with the 3 biggest think tanks in New Delhi, where we could discuss the potential topics. As our main conclusion came that, on the one hand, we can speak about relations. What is the bilateral agenda? How we can improve certain issues? And Olga just published, it should be just in a few days at our website, in English language it is, the report about Ukrainian-Indian relations and the perspective. That's one. On the second hand, we would like to identify the topics where Ukraine and India can cooperate, where the joint interest, or where we can share experience. Because you also have some problems with your neighbors. You also have the big nuclear power, United Nations Security Council permanent member, is not friendly towards you. You also depend a lot from the maritime trade, so from the ports, from their activities. As Ukraine, you also have nuclear energy. I mean, we can go and go even the spheres where we think that, okay, for cooperation, but there is certain issues where we already identified that we definitely can speak. New warfare, modern warfare, we just spoke 2 hours about this new type of the warfare that we are facing as for now. And that's why it is so important for us to be these days here in India. And a few words about the narratives and about the situation on the ground, in addition to what my colleagues said. You know, Mr. President, you said Russia losses according to the American information, but Russians declined. And that is very interesting. We usually joke that Putin is a perfect liar. He's very good liar because he's a KGB officer. He knows what to do. But he has a problem. Each time the truth slips from his mouth. And about the losses, just yesterday when he had this big press conference for 4 hours, In one sentence, he's saying that Russians are losing at the battlefield 2-3 people per day. It's technically impossible with 2,000. With Hungary, yeah. So it is, 2,000 kilometers battlefield, but okay, he said it. And then in the next sentence, he is saying the numbers about how many people were conscripted and sent to the warfare, and how many people are currently at the battlefield. You make the mathematics, one number minus another number, and you exactly receive the numbers that are currently reported as 300,000 killed at the battlefield. So the truth always comes, and that's why we prefer usually to operate with the facts. And the fact here that the beginning of the war, first of all, it definitely didn't start in February 2022. It started in February 2014, because the military actions were already there. And for all these years, despite the negotiations that we had, we definitely had the military activities, and ceasefire never been secured properly from the Russian side. If any of you are interested about the Minsk agreements, and it was its a variant, come to our ambassador, ask for an interview, because for 3 years, he was one of the negotiators. He was in charge of the security group in the Minsk process. So he has a lot of stories of how the developments happened there. But at the same time, Russia created certain myths about why they would like to attack, despite the fact that, first of all, it is the territory of the independent Soviet state that you recognize by all the treaties, first of all. And as for now, we can say that Russia violated all international conventions that they signed, starting from the Geneva Conventions of the rules of war to the bilateral agreements, like anything that you can find in the list, you can go to court and win it without any problems. And one of the proofs that we have 3 cases, Ukraine against Russia in the International Court of Justice, and in all 3, Ukraine has positive preliminary decisions about discrimination, about the state financing of terrorism. That is the first time in history when some state used this convention in the court, convention, and we already have the confirmation that Russia is sponsoring terrorist attacks. And the new one is the act of aggression. So the crime of aggression 2 years ago. And we see the myths of NATO. That's why Olga started about the NATO. But we need to understand several things. Especially in India, we hear a lot about neutrality, how maybe that can be a choice. Ukraine was neutral in 2013 with our national security strategy, military doctrine. It was said that we are neutral. It didn't prevent Russia from attacking Crimea and annexing it. As for now, again, the neutrality will not solve the situation because it's not neutrality or NATO. Again, in 2013, Russia had 10 times more joint events with NATO than Ukraine. My colleagues from NATO was joking, Anna, who is asking for membership, Russians or you? Why you have only this amount and Russians, and I just had plans, so not the empty words, we just had schedule of events, and you showed me the numbers, 10 times more of the different events. So at that time, NATO was not a problem. Yep, it suddenly started to be because that is easy to sell. You're blaming others that they are guilty. But then you come on the ground of the battlefield and you understand absolutely different situation. If the problem is NATO, why Russia is destroying Ukrainian cultural heritage, including under the UNESCO protection? Why, as soon as they are territories, they are burning Ukrainian books in libraries and schools and proudly show it in their main TV channels? They are bringing teachers of Russian language and history to the occupied territories the next day because the Ukrainian teachers cannot teach Russian history for their pupils. You are doing it when you would like somebody to stop existing as the nation, but not because it can change the opinion about NATO. So the same is happening with the grain deal. Sorry, what's the grain Ukrainian grain has for the NATO case? Nothing, but Ukrainian ports were closed 2 weeks before the full-fledged invasion. They blocked Ukrainian ports. One of the reasons is very simple. Ukraine and Russia are competing in the international markets of grains. And they understood perfectly that grains are the only commodity that the international community would never put sanctions on Russia because, like, people are responsible, they understand, and Ukraine would never insist on this. So they immediately started taking our markets in Middle East, for example, and in other countries. They gained a lot of money with this. So it's always additional reasons that are coming. But definitely, I mean, that's the more used the opportunity. The main reason was that nationhood, statehood, as so, because the Putin Empire is the most important. And imperialistic thoughts, that's why for Ukraine, we call this war, first of all, anti-colonial war. It's very peaceful for me when I hear sometimes in Africa that you cannot be a colony because you're white. And for me, that is the same racism that our colleagues from those continents are experiencing when they're somewhere in Europe and US, because we've been a colony of Russia, Russian Empire first, then of the Soviet Union for 300 years. And if a lot of colonies in Asia experienced less colonial influence than what Ukraine experienced in the Russian Empire. For the first time, Russia prohibited Ukrainian language in 19th century, twice. I can tell you the exact date this decreased. So you understand that when another country tries to do this, it's definitely not about the other relations. Brits never told you to forget your language, yeah, or suddenly to start to be Catholics or Anglicans. Yeah, however, we have these church factor became also the. So that's why we understand and we would like to deliver this message. It's not about opinions. It is so many historical facts from the old history to the new history with which we can prove why this war is so important for Ukrainians too, right? And why for anti-colonial and existential. The fact that we are fighting our war of independence, as in 1991, we were so lucky not to fight. It gave us a little bit of time for the preparation. And with this, we definitely we'll be very glad to respond to all your questions. I will give also my colleagues speak, but any of the questions, as you understand, we have country expertise, we have military expertise, my background is also in security and conflict. We can speak about bilateral relations, we can tell you what is the situation on the battlefield or in the occupied territories. I personally work with the partisans at occupied territories, so I can tell you a lot of facts of what is happening over there with my great pleasure. So all your questions, I absolutely welcome on the side.
Thank you, Hannah. May I now invite Natalia Kirskya to.
Thank you, Okan. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. And we are meeting with you 15 days before the New Year and Christmas. And Christmas and New Year are holidays very special, very important for our people, for our children. Our children write letters to Santa Claus, ask for presents for them, and our families and relatives we are gathering in December of 25th. It's Christmas Day and celebrate this. But do you know what is the wishes of our children now? They don't ask Santa toys or mobile phones or computers. They ask this. And the return of their fathers from the front, on the front, there are no children. There are a lot of people where people in their life, but they should go and defend the country. So no one in this world wants peace as much as Ukrainian children and adults. However, we do not want the kind of that foreign politicians, journalists, authorities have been calling for recently. We don't want a peace aggressor at the expense of territorial consequences, because it's like giving a piece of meat of your leg, for example, to a crocodile. After it, crocodile will come back. It's the same as Russia, because Russia did this in 2014 when occupied small but very important piece of our territory and came back to do more, to occupy more. But I would like to tell you about our life as civilians, because the war has been going on in 2 years. Firstly, when the war started, a lot of people lived Kiev, for example, Odessa, and other cities, which was very close to the front line and very close to the Russia's army. It was very strange when Kiev was empty city where lived 4 million people. For 3 days, it was completely empty. Yes, you couldn't prepare for war if you know about this. You couldn't prepare for war, no physically, no mentally, no. And after that, the most important thing is about Ukrainians. I left Kiev and to my parents' home, which is in the center of Ukraine, 300 kilometers from Kiev. And do you know what I thought? I thought that our people was preparing for summer for summer working, because they are farmers. And they gave me they showed me that we should to fight in our places. And farmers also showed that we should have meat and other products. And so this is some kind of how we live, because people who are living near battlefield, they couldn't do nothing. But another part of Ukraine, we are trying to live, we are trying to work, we are trying to raise our children, and even open new businesses. And also we're trying to restore regions which we liberated right now, because it's our country, and we think that not think, we're sure that the victory will come. And why we here? Because we think and that India could do more in moving to the peace, especially when India will loudly speak about peace in Ukraine and about stable and just peace in Ukraine. Because India is very important country for global South. And if India will lead, other countries will also try to help us, like India, big regional actor. So I will.
Thank you, friends. Let me open the session for the Q&A. There are 2 people waiting with microphones. Whoever has a question to ask, kindly raise your hand. Once you raise your hand, a microphone will come to you. Kindly identify yourself, ask the question.
Thank you. Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Rujunil Ghosh from the Times of India. My question to the panelists is, uh, there have been recent reports that there is some disagreement between President Zelensky and your army chief. Uh, and I would like to ask you, like, I mean, is this true? And if it is true, how does it impact Ukraine's counteroffensive, which, according to many reports, seems to have stalled for the moment? And secondly, the second part of my question is that you talked about victory, but you also said that Ukraine has till the 2024 U.S. elections, because one assumes will be a turning point, in terms of U.S.-Ukraine relations. So, what exactly does victory mean for Ukraine from now till 2024?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question about this. I didn't see any report on the Zelensky-Zelensky case. Only rumors with some, anonymous sources in different newspapers. So it's not really reported. What I would say, Zelensky is a military commander now. So somebody very recent kind of civilians, politicians in Ukraine, which is actually Zelensky, they have a contradiction with militaries. No, Zelensky now is a supreme commander of armed forces. He is a chief of everything, and his direct subordinate is General Zaluzhny. So they are sitting on the same table, And if they have a conflict, what does it mean military vertical? So subordinations, if they have a conflict, should stay and get out, because it's impossible to serve in the army if you argue with your commander. So Zelensky is not a politician now. We have a martial law, and Russians very often using this. The people they perceive Zelensky as a politician. They playing on this like a stereotype or myth or yes, narrative. And I would say that actually this narrative about the conflict between Zelensky and Zaluzhny always already for 2 years almost. Since the first day, the Russians trying to say that okay, it's a problem between Zaluzhny and Zelensky. They trying to fight each other, and it will be disaster. Ukraine failed state because they don't have. Couple days ago, maybe 1 week ago, it was a new narrative that Ukraine has two armies. That the one army is directly subordinate to Zelensky, and the other part of the army is to Zaluzhny. And it was a kind of confirmation that Zelensky communicate directly with commander of the land forces, General Syrskyi. Okay, from the military point of view, it's not absolutely strange because battalion commander could stop any soldier and communicate directly. What should make the soldier to of course complete the order, but they report to his commander, to the commander, for example. So it's not a problem. So it's Russians trying to play on this issue to show that Ukraine is not able to fight, is not able to manage itself, and it's a failed state. Kind of this. And talking about the counter-offensive, you mean the effectiveness? Yeah, this summer campaign didn't achieve the goals. Of course, the goal was obviously, and actually, General Zaluzhny in his article and his interview to The Economist told openly that the goal actually was to achieve to the Azov Sea, and even told that the counting on the operation they make the order. It was for this time. He told that it was possible to make it 4 times, go to Azov Sea, come back and again. So obviously we didn't get the goals of this counteroffensive, but nevertheless, as I told, for 2024 we saved our equipment, because even in this, maybe you saw this very big Washington Post article with details how counteroffensive prepared, how the American generals participated in wargaming, and etc. etc. They told that on the fourth day of the operation, Zaluzhny stopped the mechanized columns, which is go with very big problems because of the minefields. The order to use the tactic of small groups, small infantry groups, penetrating the mines, fields, and go to the defense lines to fight with Russians. So we lost only 10% of the equipment which were prepared for this counteroffensive. So 90% were saved for next campaign, and obviously after the Russia now during the winter will try absolutely the same like in the last winter. It was a Bakhmut operation. Now it's an Avdiivka operation, very similar, the same losses for Russians, the same actually it's senseless because okay they destroyed Bakhmut last year. What changed? Nothing. They lost forces, but they didn't find any operational space to continue the operation. The same now in Avdiivka. Now they could destroy this Avdiivka to just clean up it. But after this, from the military point of view, nothing changed to prepare the operational space to continue operating. So I think that we save the equipment. We will get finally we'll get the air supremacy instrument F-16 in January, and more smart weapons like GLSDB, ATACMS, and it will be better prepared for next offensive operation on the south.
I will reflect about the elections. The problem is that elections are not only in the US. Elections are also in the European Parliament. That will make busy a lot of our partners. And elections are in Russia in March. And all of them would have a certain issues. I cannot say problems, because it's just that any elections can be first of all getting off attention of the important players. The second is that during the elections, it is much easier to do the information warfare and to spread the certain topics. That's why we are absolutely aware that we can have politically difficult here. That's why, first of all, Ukraine is trying to put eggs in different baskets. That's why we are not asking only the United States for the assistance. Yeah, we have the increase of the European assistance. That's why we are talking with Brazil about 155, with South Korea about their capabilities, with others. So we are searching for addition, how to guarantee your operations even when it is the difficulties of elections. The second positive thing that Ukrainians are not prioritizing, really reflecting, respecting the sovereignty of the states. So we don't say that Republicans are better or worse than Democrats and vice versa. As for now, because of this, we have bipartisan support in the US. It is just a small group of Republicans who are making these voters muddy. But among the Republicans, we have the best supporters of Ukrainians in terms of providing weapons. They even been pushing President Biden to give more. And we hope really that this euphoria of pre-election, yes, it is there, but it will not jeopardize the intentions and decisions. And that's why in the countries like the US, we also try to move this assistance to the middle level management. If we can say, yeah. So the big legislation should be adopted. But even if today the president is busy with the elections, it will be the head of the department who already has the authorization just to work day to day. And that's what our embassy are really trying to do more and more in MOD is the same, just to make it at the practical level of dialogue and conversation. However, Russian election in March is very interesting for us, how they can influence and what luft we have. Yep. What period we have for the certain actions. Why? Yeah, we understand who wins. I mean, that's where it's not a surprise for us or something. But the last year, it is the feeling that Putin feels quite insecure and needs a victory, something to demonstrate in media. He needs this picture so even if he is falsifying the elections results, he at least can justify them in media and in public. So for this, the only thing he can show it is the certain type of military victory, because in the international arena nobody would like to talk. Economic, he cannot show anything. So what? Military. And in this case, it can be Avdiivka, or it can be something different where they would like to show that they can. And that's why we think that we have time till April before primaries finishes as the one time. However, Russians also think that during the 17th of March, that is their very time, even if it is winter, to throw all their forces, what is possible, all their missiles against critical infrastructure in Ukraine is one thing, to gain at least some success that they can tell to the public as the glory of the hero, what they give their president. And that makes it very difficult because winter is definitely not that easy for anybody. The weather is unpredictable, and you don't, depending on what type of the warfare you will have, what weather is good or bad for you. Yes. The colder it is difficult for some type of equipment, including some drones, weather is not very good. But at the same time, it is better for the heavy equipment because they can move. But when it is fog, it is very bad for drones, for example. They are not helpful, what is important. But that is better for the infantry or special forces because they can hide. And definitely the weather will influence the situation on the battle. We are ready for this, but not that much as it influenced in the beginning of the 20th century. With the use of the modern technology, you always can find other opportunities how to reach your goal.
We talked about elections in the US, we talked about but the elections are also due in 2024. And why, when people are saying that as Putin is going to prove his worth by conducting these elections, that the entire country is behind him, what prevents your president from holding the elections which are due in March and April? Because he also showed his solidarity. You will win the information war.
President Zelensky already said that we will not have elections. They should be scheduled at the end of March, because in our constitution it is said that when elections should be the last Sunday. But we have martial law, and according to the law, martial law, it is said that you cannot have elections during the martial law. Theoretically, very theoretically, you could, after the decision of Constitutional Court, bypass it. Meaning, the language is so in the legislation that you don't know what is election. It's just the day of elections or the whole process, like campaign of elections. In Ukrainian, it is the same word. It's not that they made it in the bad wording, it's just the language issue. So there were discussions among the elections lawyers. Can we, because martial law should be prolonged each 3 months. So can we set the date for the martial law up to, let's say, Saturday? On Sunday have elections, and to start martial law again from Monday. These discussions were, but Ukraine is a democratic state. So for us, elections is very important. It's not a ritual, yeah? It's important. And we are according to the Organization for OSCE rules for the elections. And now let's just think very practical things. How can you guarantee security and safety of the election places during the air raid? So you have air raid, all people need to move to shelter. You have the ballots here standing, there standing. All people are running. How you just secure, yeah? Or secure the places that they can become a target. Then, how 4 million of Ukrainian refugees will vote? Does it mean that you don't give them a right to vote? How soldiers will vote? In you will allow them to travel for 1 day home. Students are doing it during the election, for example. How can you allow media to cover everything when coming to the front line, and there are plenty of villages and towns at the very front line, they're in the red zone. According to the rules, media can go there, but they should be accompanied by military for their safety. So does it mean that the elections, all military should work just as bodyguards for media who would like to go to the village? Campaign, just a physical campaign. During the martial law, big gathering of people are prohibited. Not because of being anti-democratic, but because that is the perfect target for the terrorist act, yeah, or some missile. So does it mean that we will be able to have a campaign? And then just ask simple questions of how to organize this election. That's why, as for now, at least, the gossips were there. We even had some European politicians who started pushing Ukraine, saying that what type of democracy you are if you are postponing elections. 100 of Ukrainian NGOs who are involved in these issues, they wrote an open letter asking not to conduct elections anymore. And among those who signed, a lot of people were very critical to President Zelensky. So you cannot say that it was the Congo who wrote. No, among them, it is best of the best among the elections lawyers, professors who really critical. But they said it's impossible. Let's not make farce from elections. Let's respect.
You have a question?
Yeah. So I'm a social impact consultant. Natalia started mentioning saying, children are expecting peace from this Christmas. So what is the government doing to ensure children get good mental and emotional peace? And given the current socio-economic condition of the country, what are the different development parameters that are being, taken?
We're trying to work in directions. First of all, it's very important for our children, even in these conditions, to have education. For this, Ministry of Education ordered all our schools are working. They have shelters. And our children in most regions where the conditions is it's like peaceful, it's not front line. Our children say school because it's very contact to each other. Because, our children now under very psychological pressure, and so our teachers and try to help them. Those of programs. One first lady try to make all their issues to cover problems with children, to give them more in this situation. It's also about the children who parents, also about children whose parents, whose father, for example, at the front who died. A lot of problems because every issue needs its own approach. And also, it's important to know about Ukrainians. Education is the most important thing for our parents, for our society. And even where war was started, our parents thought about how to give our education, how to put it to school, and they when they go abroad, they try to make something like school or something like place where they gather it and try to move on this education, this school program, and now children who are living in airport can also enter kind of have education in our Ukrainian double program, and also when they are. And what about children who are living front line? the government tried to move them to the regions where the situation is stable. Yes, it's not easy, but we try to do the best for our children, our society, the children. And I think that we are successful because Ukrainian experience is maybe one of experience for a long time.
Well, actually, yeah, if I may answer, I can answer from perspective me as a mother, but also as a university faculty. So this year, this is the second year I'm teaching for students of journalism, but previously I was doing teaching also with political sciences. And this year, actually, one of my students wrote a big article on schools frontline. And from what she researched, I can tell you, and very interesting was also for me. For example, in Kharkiv region, the regional administration started building underground schools. Also, the huge number of children study in the underground. So in the metro underground, Kharkiv has underground, they refurbished, so made the classes there in the 3 rooms, and like over 100,000 children study there. And so, and plus there is this project for building of the underground school, and we hope it will probably will be finished soon. The other issue, of course, there are also initiatives from the side of the non-governmental sector. Our former Minister of Education, Hanna Novoselci, started the fund called Save That. So what are they doing? They are fundraising money and then going to the frontline territories. They said not only Kharkiv region, but mainly Mykolaiv, Chernihiv, in where they rebuild schools that Russians ruined. Because frankly, in those frontline regions, the main targets for Russians were schools, and they are severely damaged. So we renovated some of the schools or buildings in Chernihiv region. We are also renovating underground facilities that these schools have, so that more children could study in person. So this is what is done. This is what is crucial. I mean, studying in this frontline territories, because many people still stay there. Speaking about the kids in the oblasts or in the regions that are a bit further from the front line. So we have we have underground facilities, shelters. So and they have more time. So for example, if kids in Kharkiv, it's better for them to study at all underground, because sometimes missile can come, and only after that we will hear alert, because if it's ballistic missile, for example. So kids in Western Ukraine, they have this 15 or 20 minutes so that to calm down. So for them, it's easier, and they can study in their normal buildings, but still these buildings should have shelters. What I can frankly, well, we see now that more influences. The other influences that, as Cruz mentioned, many Ukrainians flee the war, and these are mainly women with children. So what has to be done is to make this. There are many of them who returned, but still, Ukraine policy now. I heard many policymakers thinking about how to bring back these children after the war. The other thing which Natalia mentioned is mental health, and this is what I think we will have to work on, because what I feel and hear from my kids, yes, so they are now, though like they are 85, but they know who's the enemy and who has the weapons to kill them, who has the missiles and makes the strikes to kill them, and this will definitely influence their perception for many years.
My question is Natalia ji. You told about Ukraine's expectation from India. So time to time India is doing. Even then, what are other expectations?
Mentioned is we working on to ways. One way is defend ourselves and our Western partners. They are providing us a weapon to defend us. In the case of India, we know that it is a neutral country. We would like that India provide weapon also, but we know the situation. It's impossible. This way, we like to have another kind of support, because we are preparing fundamental basis for peace, for just and stable peace. That our president Volodymyr Zelensky posed a peace formula, which consists of 10 points, and all these points we can put to all conflicts which we have and do have. It's about energy stability, about nuclear threats, and about lot of points, food security. 10 points very important for all countries in this, and also about international law obligation. In this way, India support us more vocally, because India is very important player. Now we see that global South position is very important for support Ukraine and also for transformations in the world, for international architecture, security architecture, and so on. In this way, these countries they are looking for leader. And there are two leaders, could be India or China. But we would India, the leader of global South, because India is a peaceful country with India's democracy, and I think in this way India could help us in many ways.
Oh, hi, I have a question. In your opening remarks, you mentioned that this delegation is targeting 9 countries to visit to exchange views with. Yeah, my personal assumption is that maybe some countries are strong supporters of Ukraine and some not a friendly country, or some countries who don't have a concrete position on Ukraine. And for your trip to these 9 countries this time, yeah, what's your evaluation on these countries' positions, and what's your expectation on their changing positions in the future? Yeah, maybe it's a broad question, but I'm curious.
No, we just started this project, so India was one of the priorities. It's not the first country that, but it's more the logistics sometimes. I will name you the countries that we chose for the first pilot project. We planned that it should be Australia, India, South Korea, Singapore, Qatar, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, and Canada. So you definitely see Australia and Canada, 2 countries that are very pro-Ukrainian, but at the same time going to have different community networking and contacts, and that is quite strange. Yep, that's why we decided that we really need to improve this dialogue, but it will be more practical probably dialogue, because there we need a little bit different priorities probably for the think tank cooperation. Even that in these countries we have those people to whom we need to explain what is happening in Ukraine. We have there as well. Singapore was very interesting because Singapore never been seen in full by Ukraine. Only the maritime probably important place, and we opened it for ourselves. But I was really surprised at that trip how many topics for the joint interest we found with Singapore, where they would like to learn Ukrainian experience. We talked with all their ministries, with all the think tanks, and they initiated this. They wanted to speak about hybrid warfare. They wanted to speak about disinformation campaigns. They wanted to speak about cyber. They wanted to speak about maritime. And they are now building their resilience strategy. Ukraine has the national resilience concept, and they also wanted our experience understanding how it works, how it was tested in real life. India is the next one. We had Thailand. It was not planned initially, but it was in October. Very interesting because Thailand also had a position when they couldn't decide exactly where they are, except for the respective territorial integrity. And it seems to me that we have quite a good perspective in Thailand how to and what to work with them. From here, we go to South Korea. So just directly, recently we are flying there. So next week it is South Korea. Let's see how it will go. But I would say that for South Korea, security is definitely a priority. We see it from the reflections programs that were sent to us by the think tanks. Because of North Korea, they really feel what is necessary. Maritime security is very interesting for them to speak with us, but also reconstruction and recovery of Ukraine, rebuilding Ukraine after the Russian attack. That where South Korean business already are ready to speak and to think what they can do in case they can be fully with us in terms of the defense cooperation. Others, let's see, we have the initial dialogue, but as you can see, we haven't chosen any countries that are belligerent to Ukraine. That's why we called our project Global Partnership. We chose those countries where we feel it's a big potential. That's where we have maybe lack of knowledge. Yeah, the level of knowledge about Ukraine, Canada, and India is different. But at the same time, where we feel that, and where we have knowledge, luckily because we have experts on the issues, for the cooperation. That's why the narrative that Russians managed to push is absolutely the same, even in friendly countries. So Russians are both very creative in this way. Who is more approachable, let's say, who is less approachable to Russian propaganda, sometimes depends on history. Definitely those countries who had closer cooperation with the Soviet Union, it's more easy to penetrate because of the different reasons. I mean, for each country it can be different. And those countries that experience the war with other enemies, there are other interesting topics where we can find the communications and the contacts because they understand that, first of all, they feel the war, yeah, but on this second hand, they all want experience. And now it is time when Ukraine really have what to share in terms of the experience of the asymmetrical warfare. And that's why even such a big country as India, with the quite a strong armed forces, but we had with the military experts this morning plenty of questions. Why this? Were drones effective? So it is the only place where you really can check and test a lot of the techniques, instruments, technologies as for now. That's why we're becoming interesting in the very practical way, even those countries are already cooperation.
Well, Soni here. So my question is, if any one of you can answer. I think the world has changed since the war in Ukraine started, and what has changed is since October 7th, we have the conflict in Gaza. Do you feel that the spotlight on Ukraine has shifted drastically? Because, as journalists, the stories that we are doing right now is more focused on Gaza, Israel, and Ukraine is somehow not getting the kind of attention it was getting before. So, one, do you agree with that? Two, if you do, how do you get the world's attention back to Ukraine? Because for most of the world, the conflict in Gaza seems to be much more important to us.
So this is the question I already have many times since the conflict in Gaza started on the 7th of October. Well, definitely the journalism as we work, it is that when we start, when this human suffering starts somewhere, of course, all attention is there. And what we've seen there, it should have been shown as it was, and the attention. It's like obvious and normal that the attention of the journalists was focused on Gaza then. But at the same time, frankly, I do not feel and I do not see that we have total disengagement from Ukraine. Firstly, because on the side of on the side of Europe, the security in Ukraine is important not only for us as Ukrainians and not only for Ukraine, but also it is important for other European states. And that is why for Europe it stays the attention and the focus stays there as well. Also with a focus to Gaza as well, but still. And the other issue is that I think, and this is what I hope we need to elaborate more, is that the Russia's war against Ukraine, I mean full-fledged war, which started in 2022, it has impact also here and all over the world. I mean, with the food price, with and the next year we will feel it even more. And this is what I think when we talk, for example, about slow journalism or about analysis, what we need to bring more to attention. That even having this prolonged war needs to have attention because its impact will be felt all around the world. And that is why we are here in the Foreign Correspondents Club. It will be felt all around the world, even the next year. And I think for India, as a leader among the global South countries, it is much more even important than for the European countries. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a little bit geopolitical information. So before October, let's say when we started the Gaza conflict and this crisis, especially after 2014, they pretended to show that Ukraine, remember this Ukrainian crisis, Ukrainian conflict. So it's like a regional problem, which is not a global, which is not actually even belong to Russia. For example, in this agreement, actually, if you look at the peace agreement, text of the peace agreement, you also find any word about Russia. This is very interesting. Well, in this agreement, you check because it was a Russian special intentions to show that this is internal Ukrainian problem. And Ukrainians, of course, always say, no, guys, this is Russia, especially destroying the international order, which is the second war after the Cold War. This is a global problem, that's why we, even before, of course, the 24th of February, we told that this is a global problem. After the Gaza problem, now crisis, I think a lot of people understand that the same players stay behind sometimes, like Iran supporting Russia, Russia supporting China supporting them. So it's a global problem of crisis of global order. So we need to stay together and try to solve this, not only in Ukraine and after this and that. So this is a global crisis of world order. I think it's opposite. It's even more focused to Ukraine and Russian war. And look at the facts how in Congress they discussing Israel, they discussing all of this problem together, how to support the environment, let's say, of these problems. Even opposite the results, not the shifting and focusing from Ukraine.
Yes. Ola, you spoke about Kharkiv. I'm in the process of the invitation from the mayor of Kharkiv to come and sign an MOU with them to promote business in Kharkiv. Most probably, I will be going there in January, signing the MOU in Kharkiv. And this is the information you mentioned. And I've already received a video from the mayor's office of the construction going on for the basement school. So I have also the video. And Makhalo, sorry, I need to ask you one thing. I have also read that South Korea has supplied more 155 mm ammunition than the whole of Europe in the last South Korea. So do you know about it? And it was, of course, anonymous source of journalists. So it's very difficult to say because, of course, it's everything is secret information. Nobody knows
But they-
concretely. But yeah, it was idea that in the situation when European Union and United States only started to rebuild defense industry base to produce ammunition more and more because Ukraine needs 2.5 million rounds per year. 2.5 millions, yeah, 2.5 million rounds per year, and of course it's impossible for now for the United States to produce. And that's why United States has, for example, Israel and South Korea and other countries who has it in the ports to give Ukraine, and after this, United States refill them. So I think maybe about this. So yeah, South Korea participating.
350,000 155 mm shells supplied within 2 months.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, because they have it. Yeah. They live in Warsaw, so they need to have some.
I am VP Singh, professor from University of Allahabad. I am covering the Ukraine war from the very beginning. And I have some observations which I would like to share with you. One is that issue regarding election you have raised. I think we forget that millions of people migrated from Ukraine to other parts of the world. They are also voters in the democratic order. So we cannot think of a election in this crisis. So I think there is no point to hold election in this emergency period. In any democratic country, elections will not. The second point I would like to raise is regarding international organizations like the United Nations, NATO, and other organizations. These organizations were during after Second World War. The situation was very different, and the very structure of the organization is not democratic. Because 5 nations have insecurity council to power, and if one is not agreed, proposal can be passed. Similarly, membership of NATO also. So this kind of structures are not suitable in 2023. And there is a need to reform this organization if we want to have a proper world order. This is my second point. Third is about Russian propaganda. I am observing certain channels, TV channels in India from very beginning. And I find that they have a heavy bias towards Russia. Not only channels, but the experts who are invited, so-called defense experts, they have preconceived notion, and when within a week, Russia will win. All retired journalists or other experts, they were off. But now, after 2 years, almost, their prediction is not true. So I think that media in India is not unbiased. They are heavy bias towards Russia, and there are reasons for that. Because India had experienced 62 or 65, 70, and during that period, Russia had helped India military wise. So therefore, there is a bias in public opinion as well as government level also towards issue. You take this into consideration as a social scientist, I can say. The situation is in media. Channels, they are showing their attention to Gaza. And only, I think, very, 100 to 10, 90, 10 Ukraine, 90 Gaza. And in that also, in social media, I think many YouTubers, they are of the Ukraine has lost the war. This is the opinion they are expressing in the chat. I don't know how, because I don't read nowadays, read media, or it's television there, but audio visual media, I can say social media is not very technology and TV channels. TV9, Bharat, News Nations, and News India. Now, Aaj Tak has almost left. Only 2-3 channels are covering the war and Ukraine partially. So I think this is the situation of Indian media. As far as India is concerned, I have verified that India is trying to come out from the clutches of Russia. Because we have depended for military purposes on Russia for a long period. And now, in this, our new government is trying to create a balance. And now we are not purchasing everything from France. Collaboration with now we are coming out of that. So I think what is changing, and you have rightly pointed out China, Russia, Iran, South Korea, this bloc is intact. I think the war will be long term. You should not think that 24 war will be over in Ukraine. It will be a long term war like this war. It may go for 10 years or more. Because there is a lobbying of different countries. So my suggestion is, as a social scientist, Ukraine should think of it that you have to fight a long-term war. You must create infrastructures, underground infrastructures for schools, hospitals, and other things so that so you think on that strategy, how long run you will educate, how the soldiers will be taken to hospitals. Because Russia has infrastructure. So can you think of underground for the safety of citizens? Citizen safety is quite good in comparison of India. We don't have that kind of experience. And luckily you have experience of Second World War. That's why you are in a better condition to protect your citizens. And lastly, that self-reliance is dependence on NATO or any other organization or self-defense. In long run, not very good. So you should think of technology, your science, work day and night, advanced technology, whether you can fight adverse weather conditions. Because if you are superior in technology, I think you can beat the enemy very easily. And apart from commitment to the high level of your force and dependence on the indicator of underdevelopment. I think this is my observation.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
Short remark about the United Nations. So Ukraine is a very great supporter of reform of the United Nations because we absolutely think that it's not the answer the challenges of the northern world. And the one very interesting fact that Russia is illegally occupied the place of the security council because nobody make a decision to change the Soviet Union after this Russia. They don't have any decisions on it.
This is Rakesh Gupta, member India Society of International Law. There was a news in United Nations has adopted a resolution for end of war in Russia. How far that is forceful and effective? And what are the international diplomatic countries doing to end this war? Thank you.
We definitely had finally in these 2 years the United Nations General Assembly resolutions because Russia being veto all possible resolutions in the Security Council. That's why United Nations used the old resolution, United for Peace, that gave the General Assembly the power to intervene when one of the permanent members blocking the process. That was used only 5 times in the history of the United Nations. We became and we see with the overwhelming voting, 140 countries, 138 countries, so that's definitely 2/3 of the United Nations. And only 5 countries usually support Russia, so others abstaining. That's a clear indication. Can it change the situation? Directly, definitely not. That is more of the moral ground for us, for those countries who are voting. But at the same time, from the legal point of view, don't forget what is in the wording of the United Nations, all other organizations, of course, around the globe are using. So if you see the act of aggression, that means that others can act according to this ground. When you see the word effective control, in other words, for occupation, it means that already the courts all around the globe will act accordingly. That's why we are criticizing the United Nations, but at the same time, we understand that in terms of the moral value and legal implications, we need to use their mechanisms as much as possible. Because Ukraine used the legal lawfare the same way as any other type of asymmetric. That's why we go to the international courts, to tribunals. That's why we arrest Russian property in different countries. So we use all methods that are in our hands, and the United Nations in this way is one of those. But also, let's not forget that we usually think about the United Nations as only General Assembly and Security Council, but that is the huge system. So if you would like UNESCO to provide assistance for the restoration and protection of UNESCO heritage in Ukraine, or if you would like the women organization to provide support for those who've been raped by Russian soldiers, or when you have UNICEF providing help for the education and for the schools, for them, the resolution of the General Assembly is the green light to do all of this, to accumulate efforts, money, and everything. That's why, sometimes theatrical, but extremely important in terms of the after effect of what can be done with this resolution.
The war seems to have reached a stalemate. The Russians, Mr. Putin, overestimated and so-called special military operation will be over in a matter of days, if not whatever. And they have occupied 18 to 20% of your territory. Economic losses you have suffered is already $500 billion, whereas your GDP is $350 billion. The Indian Prime Minister was the first to tell Mr. Putin bluntly, it is not the era of war. Everybody else that. And he has also said a dialogue is very important to solve this problem. War is not going to solve it. The Americans seem to have lost interest in Ukraine at this time. Because the entire free world would love to see you win, because victory for Ukraine would mean victory for the. But is that going to happen? Now, Mr. Zelensky went and tried hard with the Republicans, Democrats, and those $61 billion not coming. I don't know what makes you think that Mr. Trump is going to win the next election and is going to come to your rescue. NATO, of course, Hungary is resisting, they vetoed any financial aid to, but they said, okay, we consider, Ukraine's application for membership. When that is going to happen, we don't know. And Mr. No, but we have a lot of formalities. Yeah, victory. Now, Mr. Putin is fighting the election in March, and he's going to hold elections in those 4 regions which are part of your country, where these people are there. And if they claim that he enjoys 80% ratings, and the election is a formality, and he's going to the president of Russia till 2030. Now, in a situation like this, what are the chances of a dialogue settling this problem? Will a dialogue ever happen between Mr. Zelensky and Mr. Putin? Because if you're going to depend on outside military assistance, I think there is a certain war fatigue that has set in Europe and the United States. So, as proud citizens of Ukraine, what are your views on this? Will the war be over soon, or are you hoping for Mr. Trump to come to power and rescue you, or what are your observations?
Mr. Trump can rescue only Mr. Putin, but definitely not Ukraine. You raised a lot of questions, and I'll try, considering the late time, and I understand that everybody from the audience are tired, so very briefly, like one sentence to each. First of all, I would disagree that we're in the stalemate. Definitely, it is not that active as it was before because the nature of the war changed a little bit, but we are definitely not in the stalemate as for now. That was Russia would like to present in the media because in this way they can buy time to accumulating efforts and to persuade others not to give weapons to Ukraine. So it is a certain game, and during the war you always have the actual battlefield and how you present it. That any of the military will tell you that that is also important to frighten your enemy. And somebody was bringing funny masks in the Middle Ages. Yeah, now you bring interesting anonymous sources to the media. So, but it is the same technique, just to frighten first of all. So about the negotiations and talking, we always try to remind to our colleagues that first of all we had negotiations from 2014 till 2022. It didn't help, yes, for Russia, absolutely. They attacked just in the middle of negotiations. Even more in Normandy format, when in December 2019, presidents of France, Germany, Ukraine, and Russia met. They agreed that the next meeting will be in 4 months without any conditions. Starting from March, so it should be April, Mr. Putin started to find any excuses possible not to organize this meeting until February 2022. The leaders of 4 states never met. So was it Ukraine guilty? No, Russia didn't want negotiations. And even when the full-fledged war started, immediately started negotiations, first in Belarus, then in Istanbul, and the Russia was not interested in that. They wanted just a surrender and capitulation of Ukraine. They were not proposing anything for the peace agreements. What we hear now, it is the same, buying time from time to time, presenting to the global south that it is them who are very peaceful. Yeah, you can be peaceful when at the same time we're now telling about negotiations with this press conference. Exactly when he was talking about how Putin is ready for the negotiations, they were bombing Kiev. Really, you're doing it simultaneously. Honestly, you cannot wait at least 4 hours of your press conference. So that's more of the nice wording for the press conferences or something like this. But with the U.S., I cannot say that U.S. lost interest into Ukraine. As any normal state, definitely they are prioritizing the domestic agenda when it is necessary. But even during this trip of Mr. Zelensky, he had meetings with the industry. He had meetings with all think tanks, those who are opinion makers. He had meetings with the different politicians, so the level of meetings was very, very serious. And 60 million, now waiting, maybe even next week, because the Congress decided to postpone their holidays. They are yet additional week. That's a good sign. But okay, even if January, and I hear it from some senators that it can be, but the same evening they signed 200 million to the immediate, and the act of authorization of another military. So this 60 billion is not the only indicator of the support that Ukraine is receiving, even from the United States. And that is a question of meeting interest. Ukraine's stole attention from Syria. Syrians also can complain. Gaza now stole attention from Ukraine for some time. It's media market, it works like this. But we just discussed with Mikhailo coming here. He suddenly received questions from Sky News, who for 2 months been contacting. I heard from BBC yesterday, and now when we were driving here, Al Jazeera inside story. So they were not contacting for the last few months because they were totally busy. The question is, can you come to plan to discuss Ukraine and association and candidacy and everything? So media attention is coming and going. That's normal, and it is our task how not to disappear and how to tell you what other stories you can. That's what Olga said about the small stories. Yeah, it's not anymore the reporters who are, quick reporting, news reporting. Yeah, but there are plenty of work stories that really can be interesting. There's the question definitely looking on the ground. I understand New York Times and Washington Post can allow themselves these stories because they have correspondents in Kiev. So they only see these long stories, they have this time. We really would like to see Indian journalists as well coming and talking. It would be quite an openness from the Ukrainian authorities and experts to speak.
Thanks very much. Sharing your. God.
Very fundamental. End of war is not equivalent to peace. From a very realistic point of view, situation that Ukraine is in, and as Venkat and things of that sort, which you think is priority now, or rather should be the priority now for Ukraine, the end of war or peace? They are completely two different things. Your project, global project, includes countries like South Korea. North Korea and South Korea, they do not have a peace agreement. They have got an armistice agreement. So technically, the war is on between the two countries. So similarly, can there be a situation? Because if you think that the way you define peace, I think in all of the presentations, you have made this point that this only will come on the basis of the victory, because the victory is non-negotiable. So victory means the war will be on. So and peace will be followed. So the point is what people are saying. I think you see the American writers, even the Western. Can there be a situation like war? And then you negotiate. Of course, it's a protracted, situation. So that will be beneficial to all for the moment. Are you prepared for that situation, or you are being too intense and too non-compromising? That my way or highway, that means peace, my terms, not on anybody else's. I think that's an impression, is going around, and you have to be careful of that also.
The last question also, so that we can. We're running out of time. Yes, please.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Prashant. I'm a PhD student. So my question is to Mikhail. So first of all, I just saw the map of November 22 of Ukraine and November 23. There hasn't been any change. So the question is how you're planning your counteroffensive effect ahead. Secondly, second question is how you're going to make believe your Western partners that the aid they're providing you is going to good use. Hasn't changed in the map. Secondly, there have been major reports that there's been corruption charges against the president and the army of Ukraine. So how are you going to make them believe that yes, the aid that's been coming in has been to the good use? Question was how you're going to make medicine partners believe that the aid that they're giving you is going to a good use, because there has been a change in the territories, the maps. So how you're going to make them believe, and also because time to time there have been reports, corruption charges against the Ukrainian military, even on the president. Corruption charges.
Yeah, one more question. That's the last question.
My question is that what is the effect of Hungarian government decision to block 54 billion euro economic package to Ukraine, and also their plans of blocking any resolution vis-a-vis coming in more refugees from Ukraine to the EU countries. This is
Hungary is not so powerful country. Really, really. Yeah, I would, I would, if you don't mind, the question about the end of the war, peace and victory, three variants. So I think only victory is possible. I can explain. We had a Minsk agreement with Russia since 2014, and war didn't. And Putin used it just to kill Ukrainians as well, keep these territories. As I told, in this Minsk agreement, we didn't have any word about Russia. They presented it like the internal Ukrainian conflict between Ukrainian and Ukrainians, no Russians. So we had a lot of negotiations with Russia. The problem of Russia, they don't recognize it as a nation, so they cannot speak with us mentally. They cannot speak with us mentally. This is a problem for Russians. Believe me, I could give you a lot of examples. For example, Black Sea Fleet. We had hundreds of rounds of negotiations. The Russians didn't solve any problems Ukraine asked. You could check it. Since 1991, we had a goodwill of Yeltsin, of course, divided this Black Sea Fleet in 1997, signed a big agreement on friendship. But in reality, when they started the practical process of dividing of the Black Sea Fleet to Russian fleet, Black Sea Fleet, and Ukrainian Navy, it was absolutely total ignorance of Ukrainian interest. Not even interest, but even talk on the same level. So Russians could talk with India, with France, with Germany, with France, but not with Ukraine or other post-Soviet countries. They don't recognize this post-Soviet country. They recognize it like a part of empire, like a colony. So they don't want to speak with us. This is a problem for any possible negotiations. So even they call it negotiations, it will be only Russian demands for capitulation of Ukraine, total capitulation. It's we're talking about the map, offensive, and etc. In military operations, to get the territory is not the main goal. You go to any military academy. The operation has goals in case of tactical and operational needs, which can give you the possibility to continue the operation. I will give you an example. You have in modern doctrines, you have a shaping operations and decisive operations. So shaping operations, look at any Western developed Indian country, they could provide shaping operations for months using smart weapons, high precision weapons, using all of types of missiles, aviation, whatever, and land operations to get the territory to be 1 week to the several months. And the same in Ukraine, but the problem is that we didn't get the air superiority. So we had some MLRFs. This is only, it's only 60 kilometers. It's not enough for military. Yet Atacams arrived only a couple of months ago. GLSDB, 160 kilometers for MLRS, didn't arrive yet. Even we were promised 1 year ago, but Boeing couldn't make it properly. I mean, because it's technology. It's not a political, it's technology. The same with F-16. We didn't get it. Even negotiations and talking about it, discussions. In Ukraine, we couldn't understand why we get F-16 on this January, February, March, not 1 year ago. If 1 year ago, F-16 and other cars, believe me, it will be more significant use of that. But what happened in 2023? It was a lot of shaping operations. It was a huge Russian losses. You could look at the Bakhmut operation. Actually, the Wagner group died there. The Wagner group disappeared there. They destroyed Bakhmut at the same time. Prigozhin returned and go to Moscow to fight with Shoigu. This is the reason because Ukrainian forces so strongly because Wagner Group lost there 60,000 people, of course, wounded and killed 20, but together with wounded, it was 60,000. Imagine the small town. So you are right that we didn't have the, but at the same time, Russians lost a lot of ammunition, a lot of equipment, a lot of people. So next year, again, if you got it will be maybe more significant on it. About corruption, we changing Minister of Defense, we changing everything. We're going to European Union. We're very transparent. This is our interest to fight corruption. All of a lot of Ukrainian politicians, etc., civil society understand that Minister of Defense using our money, the money of taxpayers, and that's why we have a democratic on the during March, even when this pretty tough. But recently it was changed. The minister changed the whole team, and we have now in the mobilization system because it was corruption. That's right. Now we're changing to a more recruiting system instead of the solid system of mobilization. Let's say. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Ladies and gentlemen, for sharing your thoughts to us. And these proceedings are going live on Facebook, YouTube, and it video also goes into our archive site. So anybody, anywhere who wants to see it, they can see it. Thank you, Olha, and thank you, Rudro, for our months-long communications to make this happen. May I now invite my colleague Simran to present mementos to our guests. So as a democratic country, we can only wish you all the best. Thank you very much. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.